As far as tourism is concerned, it's great that we have these cleaning stations, which are quite reliable, and we have many resorts which regularly visit these cleaning stations to go and visit the mantas. But as I was saying, this particular site at Lankan, which is right next to Paradise Resort, recently the amount of mantas which have been visiting this site has really plummeted. A lot of comment has been around, oh, so many divers go there, they scared the mantas away. But there's more to it than just divers. And these relationships that we have between the reef and the cleaner fish and the mantas are very important. And there's lots of different aspects which I'd like you to consider. So first of all, the reef. What's going on with the reef? Is this still a healthy reef? Has something happened? Is there local dredging which is spilling sand on top of the reef? Has there been any storm damage recently? Have we experienced, somewhere where the storm surge or the repeated banging of the swell would actually damage the reef and break it up, so that the reef is not as pristine as it was, so that it's not a home for the cleaner fish anymore? Has there been some other incident or other natural event? So, for instance, a coral bleaching, which would have damaged the reef itself. Was this reef tsunami damaged? Has there been some recent resort development? Lankan was developed in the mid-90s, and at the time when they were blasting the channel for the inner lagoon so that the boat access into the lagoon, that almost certainly scared away the mantas at the time, and they were displaced to another area. But it's all settled down again, and from 2003 the mantas were visiting Lankan again. Has there been any current changes? Has the wind changed in this area so it's pushing the movement of the water in a different direction? Okay, and then so the cleaner fish. We want a natural healthy population. If there's a natural healthy population, then all the fish on the reef are able to enjoy their daily cleaning. So has something happened? Has overfishing or no fishing in the area caused there to be excessive predation? I would say that, for instance, in Guraidu Channel in South Mali, it's a no fishing area in the channel itself, and there now seems to be an awful lot of giant trevallies in that channel compared with a normal channel. And it seems to be that the numbers of giant trevallies is increasing and is increasing. And the giant trevallies will predate on things like cleaner fish. So it's possible that something has changed, or has something changed, which has caused an imbalance locally. Or have the false cleaners moved in and upset the clients, and so the clients have moved on, the mantas moved on. Has overfishing of the reef fish in that area, either fishing or for harvesting for the aquarium trade, means that there's not enough clients for the cleaner fish, so the cleaner fish have had to go and find something else to clean. Yeah? There's lots of aspects. And then the manta rays themselves, what could have affected the manta rays which might make them not want to come anymore? So has something happened with where their main food source is? They live in the deep water, their food source is offshore. If there's no food anymore because something has happened with the monsoon, then they will go somewhere else for their food. And is it possible that a predator has moved into the area, like a tiger shark or a large hammerhead, which would actually prevent the mantas wanting to spend much time in that area? This may sound crazy, but not crazy, but unlikely. But we have actually seen many more of the adult female manta rays at Lankan with very large tiger shark bites, which is unusual. So does that mean that there's a new tiger shark, or we're just seeing more that have escaped being not eaten completely, just they're now swimming around with a large tiger shark bite on them? There's lots of aspects which need to be considered, and just to blame the divers is not necessarily the right thing. So we need to evaluate where we are, what is going on, what are the likely causes to be. I've mentioned already that these are precedents which have been set already. So we know that at Paradise Resort, when they were dynamiting the lagoon, the mantas didn't visit the cleaning station at Lankan for about 8 years. They went somewhere else. They went nearby, luckily. So most of the divers were visiting sunlight during that period. And then from about 2003 onwards, the manta rays started to come back to Lankan, and we've had a wonderful 8-9 years of watching manta rays at Lankan, and they've moved again. So has something else, development-wise, affected why the manta rays aren't coming to Lankan? Or is it just because there's too many divers there and it's putting the manta rays off? There are other sites which actually aren't dived that often, like Ucalus and Don Carlo now, because the mantas aren't there, and Prisca up in the northern section of North Mali. There are still the cleaner fish there. The reef is still very healthy. So what has happened? Why are the manta rays not visiting? And again, an interesting observation I made from visiting Lankan so often when the mantas weren't there, and that when there's not many mantas around, the main cleaning station, the number of cleaner fish drops. And then when the manta rays come, the number of cleaner fish go up. So if you know the old chicken and the egg story, you know, which came first? So what is it? Is it the cleaner fish have to be there to attract the mantas, or the mantas need to be there to attract the cleaner fish? And we don't know. And this is a really important relationship. So all these things contribute to a difficulty in to be able to predict where the best places are to visit and see mantas. So just to investigate the effect of divers on the presence of manta rays. As I said, a lot of people have suggested to me, that there's just too many divers. The mantas don't like the divers. Well, this is a photograph taken at Lankan, and you can see all the bubbles in the background, and you can see the mantas on the cleaning station, and you can see mantas in the background waiting to visit the cleaning station. It almost got to the point at Lankan sometimes where the mantas wouldn't visit unless there were actually divers nearby. I don't know whether it was the divers signposting the cleaning station or that they enjoyed the social interaction, because we are quite sure that cleaning is not just about getting cleaned, it's actually about social interaction with other manta rays at the same time, and maybe socializing with humans, or certainly they're getting some benefit. Certainly the bubble bath that the manta rays get when they're swimming through the exhaled bubbles from a diver, they will have a jacuzzi effect. Yeah? So cleaning is not just about removing skin and parasites, it's actually the massaging effect of the cleaner acid, and that has been shown from scientific research. So maybe the massaging effect from the bubbles is actually very good for the manta rays, and actually the presence of divers is actually encouraging manta rays to visit. And we have actually got evidence that at sites where we have feeding activity, where it has been suggested that maybe the feeding activity, the bubbles, are breaking up the plankton in the water column. But from our night feeding observations, we have again not seen any detrimental effect from divers in the water with the mantas. And in fact, it seems to be that the presence of divers is actually attracting the manta rays. This is what we see on a night feeding situation. So this is a tourism activity which is very recently introduced into the Maldives. And this is an artificial situation. We have got, this is a liveaboard that has a light off the back of the boat, and this is creating a layer of plankton in the water which drops through about 10 meters, because it's usually in shallow water. And the light attracts the plankton, and the mantas come and feed in this area of plankton water. And over the years, we've worked out that as long as the divers sit very quietly, stay away from the main light area, that we can attract them to come and feed in these areas. 5 years ago, you didn't see mantas in these lagoons, and now we're seeing them on a nightly basis. This is a superb dive. The resorts can offer this dive as well to their tourists. It's a really close-up experience. But my point is that these manta rays are now not just looping the loop like this one, or swimming through this is a torch on the bottom and it's reflecting on the manta, but they're actually now coming up to the humans and actually swimming through our bubbles whilst they're feeding on the plankton. So they're engaging with the humans on a very regular basis and seem to be enjoying that interaction. I said, as long as the humans, the divers sit quietly, don't touch, stay away, they really do seem to enjoy bubbles. And there's certainly no suggestion that the bubbles are putting the mantas off. So it's important that we've shown that there's apparently no detrimental effect to bubbles and feeding, because the mantas seem to still continue to feed, and the bubbles don't seem to affect the plankton in the water at the feeding. So there are other areas where divers are not allowed to go in the water because of the feeding, because of the bubbles and the feeding. So I think it's time to review what happens at Hanifaru. Unfortunately, some divers aren't so careful with what they do when they're at the cleaning station, and trying to get as close to the manta rays to take their photographs and so forth is not necessarily a good idea, especially when they behave like this group, which are well-meaning, because at least they've tried to keep their fins off the top of the reef, but they've actually got their knees, their hands, all over kind of the live coral. This is really not good. And, real basics need to be about good behaviour, neutral buoyancy, not touching the reef, etc. Because if the reef is damaged, the home of the cleaner fish is damaged, and then there's no cleaner fish, and then there's no mantas. It all kind of goes together. So we need to be very careful that divers are appreciating that they need to behave in a certain way. As far as just the numbers of mantas being present the number of divers being present affecting the number of mantas, I did an analysis of my own observations from the last sort of 12, 13 years from Maldives, because this is a site where I'm frequently told, oh, when I used to come here 5 years ago, there used to be more mantas. Okay, so this is just a very simple analysis, just looking at the mean number of mantas that we're seeing at the cleaning station over the years. We get the odd unusual observation day when we get 22 mantas present, but that is slightly unusual. Most of the time we're getting around 5 mantas, and that's pretty steady, as you can see. It goes up and down, but there's on investigation, it's not significant. I could say I haven't put 2012 and 13 on there, but they're continuing at the same. So there isn't a suggestion here. There is no evidence here that the presence of divers is affecting the number of mantas which are present. However, at Lankan, something has happened. So I don't know whether it's too many divers or it's something else, and that does need investigation. I was recently at diving a site which I'd dived many times, but not for a few years, and I was horrified to see this is a newly built resort, and hundreds of metres of coral rubble tipped on top of the house reef. The whole house reef completely obliterated. I don't think the developers knew what they were doing or just didn't think about it. And these pilings were placed on the reef top where there were really nice table corals, and now, as you can see from this lower photograph, it's all broken up. All to build this, which is just an ornamental hut. It's not even a living accommodation. It's just a hut in the middle of nowhere. This isn't a jetty or anything. It's just something pretty. Like I said, I was very upset to see this, and this is probably going to take 25 years for this stretch of reef to recover. I don't know how this happened, and I'm sure that most of you in this auditorium will be quite horrified to see this. For those of you, the environmental science students, I hope that you're thinking, well, surely there's a role for me to be going in to be evaluating these reefs before they develop them, during the development, to make sure that the reefs are kept in a managed and looked after in a responsible manner, and that they are still in a good state afterwards. My point is that development of resorts, it's good for tourism income, but surely these things can be done in a responsible way. And it's very likely that the overall developer, the commissioner of this development, would be horrified if he saw these photographs. But the fact is, it's happened now, so it's too late. And that's the trouble. We often look back 2 years after the event and go, oh dear, too late. Generally, we're getting lots of mixed messages here. We don't really know what's going on. We've got sites which are heavily dived, and then suddenly the mantas stop coming, the divers leave, but the mantas don't come back. We've got other sites which are heavily dived, very important to tourism. The mantas keep coming, despite the fact there are so many divers. So is it divers causing the problem? We don't know. Again, there are sites where there's lots of cleaner fish. The mantas used to come 5 years ago, but they don't come anymore. And there are new cleaning stations which didn't used to be visited, and now we visit them because by mantas, this is, and now they are being visited on a frequent basis. So things are changing, and it may just be natural change, natural movement. And the whole problem is there are so many issues involved around why a particular cleaning station, why a particular reef. You know, every year things will change slightly, so it's very hard to really put our finger on what are the main causes and what has caused the change. But there are a few things that we can do, you know, positive and can do straight away. So first of all, it's protect the reefs. You know, the reefs that we have, which are regularly used for snorkelers, divers, important to tourism, make sure that all the divers know how to behave, so they're not touching the reef, they're not damaging the reef, they're very aware of what the mantas are there for, and so forth. And also that there are environmental impact on the reefs themselves done before any kind of development activity or any kind of channel changes, even kind of minor development or changes to a resort can affect local reefs. And as you've seen, a lot of the resorts are very close to where the cleaning stations are, so it doesn't take very much to happen on a resort to affect what is going on the nearby reefs. Again, measure what we have so that we know if things do change, that we can go back and say, well, what else has changed? So we need as many divers to be, or snorkelers to be involved in our ID projects, so we know where the mantas are going, and we know which mantas we have and where they go. And also, you know, to do some basic surveys on the reefs where the mantas visit or other important species visit, which are economically important, sharks, etc., so that we can evaluate what is happening at the moment and then maybe do an annual or biannual investigation to see if things are changing.